Hey everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. We're back out in the greenhouse today, but not really for a greenhouse video. We're going to do something a little bit different today, and hopefully something that is going to get you guys super excited for this upcoming gardening season.
You know, about a year and a half ago, we got a Harvest Right freeze dryer, and we used it through the growing season last year to help us preserve some of what we grow and raise on our homestead, help preserve that for long-term storage. Now, for many years, we've been preserving our harvest through canning, through freezing, through dehydrating, and we thought that a Harvest Right freeze dryer would be the next step in our preservation, because when freeze-dried properly and stored properly, that food can last up to 20 years.
Right. Not only that, but it retains almost 100% of its nutrient value and is just as good when you rehydrate it. Even after 20 years, if it was stored properly, it'll be just as good and just as good for you as it was the day you put it into your Mylar bags or however you're storing it.
It's been a huge blessing, and it's allowed us to put lots of food, lots of our harvest into long-term storage. We've also realized that it's great for freeze-drying leftovers.
Right.
So we've had like full cooked meals that we've been able to put up for long-term storage.
All those kinds of things. The other thing that we found that it's really great for is, you know, anybody who has a homestead and has chickens or any kind of birds that you get eggs from, there's some times a year when you're getting so many eggs you don't know what to do with, and then there's times of years when you're barely getting any. This has been a great way to be able to preserve eggs so that we can have them all year round from our own chickens.
Right. So it has been a huge blessing for us.
So we have decided that we would like to be a blessing back to someone who watches our channel. So today we are announcing that we are going to be giving away a Harvest Right freeze dryer. It'll be the same model freeze dryer that we have, the medium-sized Harvest Right freeze dryer, but we'll get more into all the specifics about exactly what's going to be included in a little bit. But for now, we have some harvesting to do in the greenhouse here, because we're going to take some of our first harvests out of the greenhouse, put them in the freeze dryer, and show you guys some of the cool things that you can do with a Harvest Right freeze dryer.
Now, one thing that I have found that freeze dries really well in a freeze dryer is zucchini. And don't we all end up with like just way too much zucchini every year? So that's what we're going to start off with today. Our zucchini plants in the greenhouse have been producing for almost 2 weeks now. We've gotten lots of zucchinis. It looks like there are 2 ready today to be harvested, so I'm going to go ahead and pick those. And we can use those along with several of the others we still have at the house to freeze dry. Here's one. It's not too overly big, but sometimes these littler ones are really great. There's a second one hidden over here. Get this guy. Okay, all the other zucchinis that are on need at least 1 more day, maybe a couple more days. So these are the only 2 we're going to harvest today. We're going to move on to chives. We have this gorgeous bucket of chives. It has 3 separate kind of bunches of chive plants in here. And I'm gonna harvest at least 1 full plant. Now, chives are like small green onions, you know, that you get from the store. And when you cut them back, you just use the green portion. You leave the bottom portion with the root, you leave that still in the ground, and it will continue to grow over and over and over. So I'm gonna harvest basically all of this plant here just by taking a knife and cutting just a couple inches away from the soil. Look at that giant bunch. Put that in my container. Another nice bunch. So that is pretty much all of that one plant. And you know what? That is going to fill 1 tray pretty well 1 tray of the freeze dryer. So that's all of the chives I'm going to harvest for today. Let's move on to the last vegetable in here that we are going to be harvesting to preserve in the freeze dryer. The last thing that we're going to be harvesting today for the freeze dryer is celery from the celery plants that I have in here. Now I have 2, 4, 6, 8 buckets of celery. It may seem kind of boring, but I'll tell you what, it freeze dries so well. You can add it to your soups, you can add it to your stews, whatever you like to add it to, like over the winter. It is fantastic freeze dried, and when it's reconstituted, it still has the same fantastic flavor. Now, when you grow it at home, you can harvest it as it continues to grow. You don't have to harvest the entire plant at once like you would buy from the grocery store. It can kind of continue to live on and continue to grow, and you just harvest the stalks around the outside of the plant. And the easiest way to do that, and really kind of the safest way for the plant, is just to peel down or pull down on the stalk and peel it away from the base. Just like that. And that's just how you're going to do it all the way around the plant. The rest of it is going to stay intact and continue to grow. Now, we have 2 empty trays for the freeze dryer left. I'm not going to do 2 full trays of celery, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate it into 1 tray of celery and 1 tray of celery leaves. Now, when you buy celery at the grocery store, there aren't many of the leaves left, but you guys, it has fantastic flavor. And we're going to freeze dry them and powder them and use them as a celery flavoring. And you can use it in replace of, celery salt, or really just anything you want to add a little bit of celery flavor. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to continue harvesting the outside stalks from this one and a couple other plants to put into the freeze dryer. Well, we have everything we need. Let's head back to the house and load up the freeze dryer.
We're back at the house, and we're going to start preparing all of the vegetables that we harvested today to go into the freeze dryer. But while we're doing that, we also wanted to take some time to just talk to you guys about not only the giveaway that we're doing, but also some of the basic questions and some of the most asked questions that we get about home freeze drying. So before we get into kind of the Q&A section of this, let's go over what's going to be included in the giveaway that we're going to be doing. So we're going to be giving away basically the same exact freeze dryer package that Sarah and I bought for ourselves. It's going to come with the medium white colored freeze dryer. We're going to include 2 sets of the trays, which is really nice because you can have 1 set in the freeze dryer while you're preparing another set to go in. So that's really nice. What else is going to be?
The Premier pump.
All right, the Premier, the upgraded pump, 50 Mylar bags and oxygen absorbers, and then the sealer for sealing up the Mylar bags. So that's what's going to be included with the package that we're giving away. We think it's a really great package. It allows us to freeze dry a lot of food.
Right. It will include shipping.
Right.
Which is freight, actually, isn't it?
I think so. If I remember correctly, I think that's how it comes. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it'll include shipping. It'll include everything that you need to have a freeze dryer on your homestead.
Now, this is actually coming at a perfect time because we talked to Harvest Right about this, and they are telling us that their lead time is about 6 to 8 weeks from the time of order. So that means that the freeze dryer will be arriving at the winner's doorstep right at the perfect time, right around the beginning of August, which for us at least is like the prime harvest time.
Right, so we're hoping whoever wins this will get it in time to be freeze drying plenty of their home raised food yet this summer. So that's what will be coming. That's what the winner will receive. We're excited to be able to give this away. We'll give more details at the end of this video about exactly how to get into the giveaway. It's not going to be complicated at all. So let's get into more of the questions about the freeze dryer, because now that we've had our freeze dryer for a little over a year and a half, we've learned a few things and we've answered a lot of questions from you guys. So let's just answer some of the real basics. The first thing, and really I think the most asked question, is really what's the difference between freeze drying and dehydrating foods? Because a lot of people have home dehydrators, and we dehydrated a lot of stuff before we got a freeze dryer.
Right.
Honestly, we don't much anymore.
No.
Very few things. So let's kind of talk about the basics. So let's start with dehydrating, since I think most people are more familiar with that. Dehydrating basically works just by heating the food up, and the moisture in the food is going to basically go away through evaporation.
Right, and a fan.
And a fan, right. It's going to evaporate, and that's how you're going to dry your food. The problem with dehydrating is that when you have to heat the food up like that, you lose a lot of nutrients. You'll also notice that when you do that, your food looks quite a bit different after you dehydrate something. It's not going to look the same as it did before, or when you first put it in.
Well, and I think the statistics that we looked at, which were comparing dehydrated food to freeze-dried food, is that dehydrated food, only about 60% of the moisture is removed when you dehydrate, but
Right.
with freeze-drying, it removes like 95%.
Right. Oh, more than that. I think like 99%. Yeah, I mean, it's like almost all of the moisture is gone from freeze-dried food.
Right.
That's what gives it the extra shelf life. With home dehydrated food, they really recommend that you use that within a year. Now, we all know that if you do everything perfectly and you store it perfectly and everything went perfect while you were dehydrating it, you can push that a little bit longer than that, maybe even up to a couple years. But with freeze-dried food, you're looking at 20, 25 years in storage, which really is an amazing thing when you think about it, that we could be eating our freeze-dried food when we're 70 years old. This stuff that we're doing today, we could be eating when we're 70 years old.
Right, and there is a big difference also in the nutritional value of the freeze-dried food versus the dehydrated food, and a lot of that has to do with because of the heating. In freeze-dried food, there's no heating taking place in that whole process, whereas in dehydrating, there is.
Right, yeah, freeze-dried food works through a process called sublimation, which basically means that the food is going to be frozen to about negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's going to be extremely cold. Then a vacuum pump is going to basically create like a vacuum around all of the food within the freeze dryer. And as the food slowly warms up but is still frozen, all of that moisture just gets sucked out by that vacuum. And that's how it gets so much of the moisture out, but also preserves all of the nutrients in the food because you never had to heat it up and basically cook it. So those are really the major differences between dehydrating and freeze drying. They're both good, but the freeze drying definitely gives you more nutrients and a much longer shelf life. And really, in our opinion, the food tastes so much better when you rehydrate it.
Now, what about cost, like the electricity cost? Because we've had a lot of questions about the cost difference between a dehydrator and a freeze dryer. And doesn't a freeze dryer just use up so much electricity that it really just doesn't even make sense?
Right. Now, we actually did an entire video about the cost of running the freeze dryer a couple of years ago. Basically, what it worked out to is, in a 24-hour period, actually it was 26 hours that we had to run it for that batch, it ended up using about 14 kilowatt hours of electricity. For us, in our area, we pay about 10 cents per kilowatt hour to have electric here at our house. So we figured to run one batch of food through the freeze dryer, that's all 4 trays running through the freeze dryer, cost us about $1.40. We actually did the same thing with our dehydrator, just a standard dehydrator, and it was almost exactly the same. I think it was like $1.25, so almost the same amount of energy for a dehydrator as it was for the freeze dryer. So I really do think it's kind of a myth that the freeze dryer costs a ton of money to run. In our experience, it doesn't. And when we compared it to the dehydrator, they were just about the same.
Another question that we get is, does the process, the whole freeze drying process, take very long? And really it depends on how, wet your products are, or if they're frozen ahead of time, or if you put them in not frozen. Generally, what we are doing takes, like Kevin said before, about 24 to 26 hours. There are some ways to shorten that time frame. You can freeze your produce ahead of time in your freezer and put them in your freeze dryer frozen.
Right.
That saves time because then your freeze dryer doesn't have to freeze it before it can freeze dry it.
Right.
Now, it doesn't always make sense to freeze your stuff first. I mean, why put it in the freezer if you're just going to put it in your freeze dryer? There are two main reasons why I freeze produce and freeze the product before I put it into the freeze dryer. The main reason is my freeze dryer is already full and is running, and I have a bunch of food that I need to get processed. So while I have one batch going in the freeze dryer, I get the second batch ready and put that in the freezer on standby. I'm on deck to go in.
That's why we're going to include 2 sets of trays with the giveaway, because that makes it so much more efficient.
Right. The other main reason why I freeze some things before I put it into the freeze dryer is that some food, if you don't freeze it first, will kind of burst a little bit in the freeze dryer. And it's not a huge deal. It just kind of makes a mess. I've experienced that with scrambled raw eggs and raw tomato products.
Well, it seems like real liquidy things.
Well, liquidy, some people say it has to do with the sugars in the food, like the raw tomatoes. So over time and through experience, you kind of figure out what should be pre-frozen and what doesn't have to be. But you never have to put something frozen in your freeze dryer.
No.
You can always put it in unfrozen. There's a button that'll ask you, hey, is your product frozen or not frozen? And then you just press the right button and it takes care of everything.
Right, yeah, we'll show you that when we actually go put this food into the freeze dryer. The freeze dryer really takes care of everything itself.
It's like set it and forget it.
It asks you like 5 questions as you're putting your food in, and then it just takes over and does it automatically. So it's super easy to use.
Very easy.
Now, one question that I get a lot is there a lot of maintenance with it? Because I don't know if maybe some of the original freeze dryers had more maintenance, but there's kind of like the electricity thing. There's kind of a misconception that there's just a ton of maintenance to do on a freeze dryer. With the Premier pump that we have and the one that we're going to be giving away with the freeze dryer, there's very little maintenance.
Right.
About every 25 to 30 cycles that you run through it, you should drain the oil out of the pump, which is literally just unscrewing one little knob at the front. And you can either then replace the oil with new oil, or you can filter that oil and put it back in. The unit comes with a filter that you can drain your used oil into, and then you can just let that filter. It kind of looks like one of those Brita water filters. So you just run it in there and then just dump it back into the filter or back into the pump, and it's all ready to go again. So it's very low maintenance. We've had no other maintenance issues with it whatsoever. It's just been a workhorse since we've had it.
Absolutely. Okay, so I have the celery chopped up. I'm going to work through the chives, get the zucchini and the celery leaves all done and on the trays. Then we'll take you out to where we have our freeze dryer and load it and tell you the final steps to the Harvest Right freezer giveaway. So all the veggies from the greenhouse are chopped up and on the trays. All 4 of these will go into the freeze dryer. I have the celery and the chives that I chopped up by hand with a knife. The zucchini, we used a Vidalia Chop Wizard, which I use all summer long with getting my produce ready for canning and for the freeze dryer. And then these are all of the celery leaves. We actually put these in a food processor and just quickly blended them up so that all of that volume would be reduced down and it all could fit on one tray. It worked really well. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. So let's take all 4 of these trays to the freeze dryer. We're gonna load it up, show you how things work, and get this started, and then we'll finish up talking about the giveaway.
So here is our Harvest Right freeze dryer. This is the same exact model that we're going to be giving away. Again, it's the medium-sized freeze dryer, the Premier pump right here. This is what I was telling you, where you drain the oil out of the front of the pump. There's just a little thumb screw right here. You just turn that when you want to drain the oil, and it just drains out super easy. So you'll be getting all of this with whoever wins. We'll be getting all of this. Now the one thing that I didn't mention is, one thing they do recommend is that you should have a dedicated 20 amp circuit in order to plug the Harvest Right into. It does plug into just a regular wall outlet. It's not like a 220, it's a regular wall outlet like all the other outlets in your house. But they do recommend that you have a dedicated 20 amp circuit. So that won't be included obviously in the giveaway, so you may need to have an electrician come and do that for you if you're not able to do that. We had an electrician come and do that for us when we first installed our Harvest Right. I think it cost me like $100. It was really easy. So anyway, that's something that you may need to think about. You're going to need a place to put all of this, and you're going to need that dedicated 20 amp circuit. So we're going to go ahead and get everything loaded into the freeze dryer. There's just a plexiglass door here on the front. This opens up. You can see the slots where you can put your 4 trays. So we're going to put our celery leaves, our zucchini, chives, and our celery. And then we're just going to close the door back up, and it makes a seal around this big rubber gasket here at the front. Now, on some of our older videos, you may remember that there was like an insulator that we used to put on the front of here. Harvest Right no longer recommends using that, and I don't believe they even send it with the new unit. So if you get one and it's not there, that's on purpose. They don't recommend you use that anymore. You just do it just like this. Now, you may hear rain. We're out in our barn, which is one of our outbuildings, which is where we keep our freeze dryer. And this building has a metal roof, and it just started to pour. So if you're hearing rain, that's why you're hearing it. Alright, so let's get the machine running. It is turned on. Now this is a very simple machine to use. Now I will tell you, when we zoom in closer, you're going to see a warning on ours. Like I said, we're out in one of our outbuildings. This building is not air conditioned. So it gives us a warning that says the temperature in this building is too warm. In the winter, it gives us a warning saying the temperature in this building is too cold. We've talked to Harvest Right about this to see if it's a big deal, and they've told us it's not a big deal at all. That the machine will alert you when you're not in the optimum temperature range for the machine, but it's not going to hurt it to use it if it's too warm or too cold. In fact, what they said is, when it's too warm, it may take a little bit longer to run, but in the winter, when it says it's too cold, it may actually speed things up because it'll freeze things faster. So, not a big deal. It's not going to hurt the machine, but I did, just in case you guys ever get that message on yours, you'll know it's not a big deal. So let's zoom in so you can see the actual screen, and we'll get the machine running. So the first thing that the machine is going to ask you is whether or not the food that you're putting inside is frozen or not frozen. And we talked a little bit about that inside. In this case, our food is not frozen, so we're going to hit that. So the next thing it's going to ask is, or it's going to tell you to make sure you've closed the drain valve. You want that closed, otherwise it can't create the vacuum inside of the unit. So I know our valve is closed, so I'm going to hit continue. And then from here on out, the machine really is going to take care of itself. It is now freezing. Once it's done freezing, it'll move on to creating the vacuum and actually freeze drying the food. And after that, it'll be all done. So everything is in the freeze dryer. It's doing its thing. From here on out, we just kind of leave it alone. In a day or so, when it is done, we'll take everything out. We will record that for you guys so that you can see how everything turns out. And then a few days after that, we'll record another part of the next video, and that will be when we announce the winner of the giveaway. Now, we need to talk about how you can enter our giveaway. Right. It's going to be pretty easy, you guys. In order to enter this
giveaway, all you need to do is comment below in the comment section of this video.
Right.
The giveaway is from today, when you're seeing that, Saturday, June 11th, and it will go until Friday, June 17th.
Right. So the video announcing the winners will be on Saturday, June 18th.
Yes.
Now, a couple things. First of all, we will use a program that will automatically pick a random comment, and the winner of, or the person who left that comment will be the winner of the freeze dryer. Sometimes when we do these contests, there's some confusion. Maybe some people don't know how to comment on a YouTube video, and they email us and ask us to put them in the contest. Unfortunately, we can't do that because the software that we use can only pick from the comments. So if you're having a hard time commenting, but you want to get in the giveaway, maybe ask someone to help you.
Right.
Maybe you know, a younger person can help you with that if you're having some trouble. But you need to be able to leave a comment in the section of the video.
Another thing that happens quite often is that people think, okay, well, if I comment one time, that's good, but if I comment 100 times, that must be better. But the software that we use eliminates duplicate entries.
Right.
So, I mean, if you do, it's not going to help you at all.
Right.
It'll just...
We'd like to read your comments, so you can leave comments, but every person is going to have the same chance.
Right.
Which is one comment per person.
The other thing that we want to talk about is if you are completely inspired by the Harvest Right freeze dryer that from this video, and you decide to order one within the time frame that we are doing the giveaway from June 11th of 2022 to June 17th of 2022, if you order but then you win, you can either choose to get a second freeze dryer,
right.
the free one from us,
the one you ordered,
or we will reimburse your order as long as it's the same order as what we're giving away.
Right.
We'll reimburse you for that. So if you were going to put in an order, go ahead and still do that. If you win, you get 2 freeze dryers, or we refund your order that you paid for.
Right.
Another thing I want to mention is that we already said this, but I want to make it clear that we will announce the winner in a video.
Right.
We're not going to put in a comment, hey, you're the winner,
right.
anything. There's so many scams going on right now, you guys. If you're the winner, you'll hear your name in next Saturday,
right.
June 18th's video.
Right. Now, the last thing that we do have to say in regards to shipping is that this is going to be open only to people within the continental United States. We wish that we could open it up to everybody, but the freeze dryer is a big, heavy machine, and we just cannot ship it further away than that. So we're sorry for those of you who are maybe not in the United States.
Yeah, we still appreciate you following along. We love all of you.
But we just can't afford to ship one outside of the United States. So we hope you'll understand that. Yeah, so we hope that all makes sense. You guys, good luck to everybody. Having a freeze dryer here on the homestead has been such a blessing to us. We want to be a blessing back to one of you, and we hope that this will be a way to do it.
We also hope that if you're interested in the Harvest Right freeze dryer and you want to learn more, you can click the Harvest Right link in the description of this video. We're also going to pin a comment early when this posts, so you can take a look at it there. And, you know, forever, if you want to come back to this video because you want to learn more, the link will be there.
Right.
We encourage you to do that.
All right, you guys, good luck. Leave your comments below. And thank you so much for spending the day with us. You know, as always, the best way that you can help us here on our homestead is to share our videos so that other people who may not find us naturally can find us because you're sharing them and telling them how much you like our videos.
You may really want to share this one so that your family and friends and other people who may want to have a chance to win a Harvest Right freeze dryer, they can do that. So share this one for sure.
All right, you guys, we'll see you next week. Until then, thank you so much for stopping by our homestead. Take care, and God bless.
God bless.